Welcome to Eviliv3, live media commentary. The show that answers the question, what two towers is Tolkien talking about? Subscribe if you're new to the channel, because today we're reviewing The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien. That's right, The Two Towers. All right, so let me give you my initial thoughts, and then we'll just sort of dive into the novel, as it were. It's exactly what I expected. There's only a few differences between the extended version of the film and the novel. And, yeah, it just sort of, I don't know. It just sort of ends. It's a strange one because, like, the first book is all about Aragorn and the other Fellowship members. And then the second book is all about Frodo and Samwise. And so it's a very split experience. You're reaching one totality in one end, and then you're going back in time and then doing another one. So it's like starting the book over again. But the traveling with, well, first of all, the introduction of Gollum and Smeagol, because those are very different introductions. One is the creature, and the other is the person that is sort of being held by the creature that came out of Smeagol because of the One Ring. The introduction of that character it fell flat compared to the actual series, or I'm sorry, the film version of it. And the traveling felt very flat and kind of boring. Like I didn't enjoy reading that section. And though it wasn't very long, it did sort of speed things up. I don't know. At that point, I kind of felt myself drifting and not really caring, because it's not an exciting experience, at least in my opinion. So those are my initial thoughts. Let's get into the details. So this is author J.R.R. Tolkien's second novel in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It was originally released as 6 small books. Those 6 books were paired up into 3 volumes of 2 books each. And ultimately, the series The Lord of the Rings was printed. Now, this was originally published by George Allen and Unwin on 11 November 1954. And like I had mentioned, it picks up right where we left off, with Aragorn and company racing up to try to find Frodo when Boromir came back down and said that he had tried to take the ring. And they're just like, stay here. And they ran up and ran away from him. And then, of course, Frodo and Samwise had already gotten in their boat, and they were crossing the river to go right into Mordor themselves, not wanting to wait for, or not even wanting to work with the rest of the Fellowship, just completely abandoning them based on just Boromir's reaction in that one heated moment. And so I was complaining at the end of the last book that they didn't actually have the battle that was so massively focused on in the novel. I'm sorry, in the movies. What we ended up getting at the very beginning of this is the battle. However, once again, Tolkien does such a shit job at describing actual combat or battles, so much so as to not describe them at all in some cases. Basically, Aragorn heard Gondor's horn being blown by Boromir, know exactly what it portends, and raced back down, only to see Boromir already dead, like already laying down. And he sort of like kisses him on the head and does this whole thing with him. And that's when Gimli and Legolas show up, and they're just like, oh my gosh, what happened to the hobbits? What's going on? He's like, I don't know. I just found him like this. There's no like huge battle sequence or anything. It's just like they came back and he was dead. So like, well, we can't go chasing after the hobbits until we figure out how we can't just leave him here, because then the wild animals are going to get him. So how are we going to bury him? And they ultimately decide to put him in a boat and just let him drift down the river. And so they do that, and then cut to them making a choice about who should they follow, because clearly Frodo and Samwise went one direction, and the orcs seemed to have taken Pippin and Merry. And so they decide to go after Pippin and Merry, not wanting to leave them to the machinations of the orcs. clearly kind of guessing why the orcs took them alive rather than killing them. And we sort of cut between at some point to the orcs and their perspective with Pippin and Merry and their escape into Fangorn Forest. And it's not really like the film at all, where they're trying to like eat them or something like that. It's really just comes down to the line of they were trying to get them to Saruman, but they were also working in conjunction with goblins from Moria. So that's where the other goblin group came from. And the goblins of Moria were thinking, well, why don't we just bring them back to Moria? Because they have some power there. And he was like, no, Saruman wants him. We're going to bring him to Saruman. And so there's a little bit of conflict there, but it doesn't really end in a battle between them. What it ends in is, of course, are the Riders of Rohan finding them and then attacking them. And then we have Pippin and Merry escaping narrowly into Fangorn Forest and being found by Treebeard. So basically, we have Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli tracking the orcs and not doing a very good job of it, but running for like 4 days straight, trying to catch up to these war bands. But the orcs only move at night, and they're still incredibly fast compared to these three heroes. Eventually, they meet the Riders of Rohan, and they initially, very cautiously, understandably so, surround them and sort of threaten them. But once Aragorn says straight up who he is and who his partners are, then they sort of stand off. And what we realize quickly is the difference, a big difference from the movie to the books. In the books, it's never once presented that Theoden King is somehow against his son, or not his son, but the Rohan rider. Where is my note on his name? For some reason, I am not finding it. Well, in any case, it's always presented as if, Éomer, that's it. As if Éomer was like outcast from Gondor. Or I'm sorry, from, I'm getting these places mixed up. Like outcast from his father. But he wasn't an outcast at all. He was just riding around because that's where he was supposed to be, checking for the enemy, because the enemy was increasingly crossing Rohan's path. And so the whole thing with Theoden and Éomer and Wormtongue is pretty much the same, except for the ostracizing of Éomer. And so ultimately, Éomer's like, look, I'll grant you passage. I'll even give you horses if when you're done searching for your companions, you come back to Rohan and present yourselves to Theoden the king and let him, know that you've brought the horses back and that you're who you say you are. And he was like, all right, no big deal. So they take the horses, they go to where all the orcs were defeated and end up finding their way into Fangorn Forest. And they actually did see Saruman one evening traveling through Fangorn Forest, but then we cut to, of course, Gandalf revealing himself. And what I really wanted was more information about Gandalf and what happened when he died. And basically all he says is, no, I had unfinished business, so I was sent back. Sent back by whom? Sent back for what? Is it just for the ring, the War of the Ring? If they sent you back, why are there not other entities that are being sent to help the world? Are you the only one? Like, it doesn't give me enough to satiate my curiosity. I guess I'm just going to have to read the Silmarillion next after these books so that I can get the full cosmological understanding about what's going on. But I really wanted more out of that conversation with Gandalf, now the White, revealing himself to Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas. And so they agree to all together go back to Theoden King and present themselves. Again, there was never that point where Gandalf has to like attack Theoden or anything like that. He just explains things to Theoden, and then Theoden straight up just ostracizes Wormtongue, and they send Wormtongue off. And he then, of course, rides to Isengard. So then they all together head over, because they know that war is coming. They all head over to the fort and to that massive battle, but we don't actually, I don't know. I felt like the battle itself was less than exciting to me. I really didn't think that the Helm's Deep was like presented properly. You know, I just wanted more detail. But again, J.R.R. Tolkien sucks at describing battles because he just doesn't do it. You know, so I just sort of have to make shit up on my own in my own head or fill in the gaps from the films, which I don't think is really fair because he does present things differently. Hey, Cameron, how you doing, man? Eru Eviliv3 sent him back. Okay. I did not know that. I will find that out. Eventually, I'm sure. I did like the whole, you know, fighting the Balrog and stuff like that, but it's still, there wasn't detail. And I want details. You had way more details just watching the film than you did from Gandalf's explanation. So the Battle of Helm's Deep, I found very uninteresting. And again, it wasn't even like the movie at all where they have like all the women and children and they're picking up people from civilizations on the way, from all the towns on the way to go into Helm's Deep and hide in the caves and stuff. They weren't there at all. It was literally just the fighting men and women. And so they all went there and defended themselves, and Gimli ended up going in the caves, and he was like struck with awe by what he found in the glittering caves and stuff. What I found really interesting was that when Gandalf went out to go collect more people to help defend Helm's Deep against this massive orc invasion, but the orc invasion wasn't from Sauron, it was from Saruman, who at this time is still only kind of working with Sauron. He's trying to like double cross Sauron by getting the ring first so that he can be the one in power. He's not working on behalf of Sauron directly, which I find very interesting as a difference from the films to the books. And so he goes and he like meets with Treebeard and he's like, hey, send me some of your trees to fight these stupid orcs. And Treebeard's like, yeah, I'm kind of in the middle of assaulting Isengard, but I'm sure we can figure something out. And so he gets a bunch of, I think they're called like Horons or something like that. I can't remember. But they send these trees to go fight the orcs on behalf. And then he goes off and gathers a whole bunch of fighting men from all over. And then, of course, they come back and they defeat all the orcs. And then the trees end up like burying the orcs in this huge, like rock covered pile. And I'm just sitting here thinking, that's gotta stink. Like in one day. It's got to be the worst smelling area just outside of Helm's Deep, full stop. And then Theoden goes with Gandalf and everyone to Isengard, and that's where they meet up with Pippin and Merry, who are just smoking tobacco. And that's the other thing, is it's like, I know they reference it as pipeweed, but it's explicitly stated that it's tobacco in the books, not like marijuana, for example. And I've always loved the idea that it is weed. You know, the parlance that we use as kids for marijuana. But no, it's just tobacco. In any case, there's this huge meeting. And again, it's different from the movie because Saruman doesn't die. He's not killed by Wormtongue. Wormtongue just throws the Palantir, which is the first time we're actually introduced to the Palantir at all. It wasn't in the first one when Gandalf went to entreat with Saruman. And so Saruman is just sort of hiding in the tower, talking smack, trying to turn Theoden against Gandalf right in front of him, which doesn't go over well. And then we have Grima Wormtongue toss the Palantir out. Pippin grabs it and is intrigued by it, but then Gandalf quickly grasps it up and wraps it together. Gandalf has no idea that Sauron is able to see through this thing at this point. He has no idea. He just knows that in the old days, the Númenóreans would use these in order to talk to each other. So they're basically like telephones. Like literally. They would just talk to each other, which then makes me reflect on the Rings of Power series and go like, well, why the fuck did Sauron... Why was he in that? He shouldn't have been connecting with the Númenóreans, with the Palantir then, because that didn't happen until Saruman started doing it, and he accidentally looked too deep into Mordor, and that's how the eye was turned to him and started communing with him. So it's a totally different setup which reframes the epic entirely, in my opinion, as it's being presented through all of the series. None of that fucking show made sense with the actual lore. Yeah, I'm coming to realize that. I am really coming to realize that. In any case, I thought the Palantirs were kind of interesting. And then, of course, they set up so that the Ents are basically going to be watching the area while Pippin and Merry rejoin with everyone and they go off to Minas Tirith. That's not in this book, however. So then we start over with Sam and Frodo heading into Mordor, and it's just a sequence of them traveling and looking at areas and realizing they could go this really easy, massive road route, but it's like regularly patrolled. Then they meet up with, why can't I ever think of Gollum's name for some reason? They meet up with Gollum and they sort of tie him up with ropes, but apparently the elven rope literally does burn his skin, or at least it's convincing enough that they end up letting him go after he swears on his precious that he'll stay with his master. And what I found really interesting was that there was at no point did Smeagol / Gollum turn Frodo against Samwise like they did in the films. That wasn't a thing at all. Like, it was just Samwise talking shit to Smeagol and Frodo being like, oh, you scamp, be nicer. He never sent him away. He never called him any names or anything like that. It was just like, I don't know. It was totally a different dynamic, which makes me a little bit frustrated because there's less tension in the novel than there is in the film between the three of them. And the tension is what makes it interesting. Because again, Frodo recognizes Smeagol for the poor creature he is, being corrupted into Gollum by the ring. And he identifies with it because he can feel it happening to him. And then his servant, Sam, is like openly mocking this thing, calling for him to be like killed and stuff all the time. He should reciprocate that connection a little bit more and be more like the film, but he doesn't. It's hollow. And so even when he's led up to Shelob's area, which is super cool as hell, and learning more about Shelob was awesome. I had no idea. And it makes me want to know who the hell is Ungoliant, because Shelob was around before Sauron was around. Like, on the planet. Like, who's Ungoliant? Because Ungoliant is who Shelob came from. Like, there's some serious lore being dropped, and it's not describing or explaining any of it. And I, as a lore hound, am just like clawing at the pages like, you sons of bitches, why are you dropping all this stuff and not explaining it? So it just makes me really want to know more, which, I mean, it's a good thing, really. So Shelob also doesn't get killed. It alludes that she might have crawled back into the hole and healed up and terrorized more people, but that's beyond the scope of this book. It literally says that. So you never really know. Oh, it's a much bigger spider. It's got to be a scary motherfucker. It's got to be like it in its spider-like form. So they escape from Shelob, but again, Frodo is like all passed out dead. And Samwise is beside himself. Like he's actually dead. And he waits there for like a full night. And Frodo doesn't wake up at all. And so then, so then Samwise takes the ring and starts heading toward Mordor. And that's when the orcs come. And he actually puts the ring on. And at no point when he puts it on, is there a semblance, is there a suggestion that Sauron knows about it or the Ringwraiths know about it, even though there's a Nazgul right in town right now, like just visiting, having like, I don't know, tea or something, whatever Nazguls drink. I know they don't drink. So like Sauron and the Nazgul are like having their leg wrestling. That's what they do. They're leg wrestling together. And the ring is literally right outside their doorstep and they don't even know about it when it's used, which again belies what I've always been told previously about the ring, not just from the first book, but also the films, that once it's put on, his attention is drawn to that expression of power. And it's just never addressed at all. And so he follows the orcs in as they're taking Frodo's body. And again, there's no, at this point in the story, at the end of the Two Towers, there's no big battle that that Samwise has to go save Frodo from them trying to claim the ring yet. Like, I don't know if that's at the beginning of the next book or if it's not in it at all. I just have no idea. So that was the end of the book. So it's actually, it's a fun, interesting read. I didn't like the whole restarting halfway through to tell Sam and Frodo's story. They could have just done like chapter swaps so that the narrative was continuous, so that you end in the same place. And I guess it doesn't really matter that much. It's just, it bothered me a little bit. I thought there needed to be more detail. In the first book, we are featured to, we are granted an incredible lore dump at Rivendell, which I loved and I wanted more of. We never got that in this book, but it does suggest things that make you want to know more, and it just doesn't explain it. And so that's a little bit frustrating to me. And again, the battles. We were supposed to have this huge, massive battle of Helm's Deep, and it went like a fart in the wind. And every time there's these huge combats, like the battle with the Ents in Isengard, fart in the wind. Doesn't really describe much of anything. And it's just so vague and after the fact, being explained by Pippin and Merry to the Fellowship as they finally get to Isengard, that you're just like, why are you even bothering? Like, what the hell? So I was kind of bothered by that, but what are you going to do? Ultimately, I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 evil eyes because J.R.R. Tolkien is just not good at battles. And this is a war trilogy. So you should be focusing on battles, in my opinion. And instead, it's focusing on lore and travel. And the lore part's great. The travel part sucks. So I don't know what the hell he was thinking. And this is probably why it shit the bed when it was first released. And it took a while for people to start paying attention to it and actually appreciate it. I did want to talk because there is some sort of questioning about, well, what 2 towers are they talking about? Because there's a lot of towers mentioned in the book. J.R.R. Tolkien, actually waffles a little bit about what the 2 towers are, and he sort of gets frustrated in letters talking about it. But the first tower could be Orthanc, which is, of course, Saruman's tower in Isengard. That's probably one of the 2 towers he's talking about. Then there's Barad-dûr, which is Sauron's tower in Moria, in Mordor, which is probably the second tower they're talking about. But there are other towers. There's Cirith Ungol, which is the tower that the orcs take Frodo to. There's the tower in Minas Tirith in the Kingdom of Gondor, where there hasn't been a king for generations after the overthrowing of Sauron the first time. And so maybe that's a tower they're talking about. And then there's Minas Morgul, which is super fucking awesome. I love the Nazgul, and I love the idea of Minas Morgul. But it's the tower as Minas Ithil, the Tower of the Rising Moon, which was once a part of Gondor, but is now, of course, claimed by the Nazgul. So there's a lot of really great lore and towers and stuff, but he never explicitly says which 2 towers he's talking about. It's got to be Saruman and Sauron. And I love that here's something I want to talk about really quick too. So Saruman is alive. He's isolated in his tower. The Ents are keeping him there and he can't leave. Pippin sneaks at night to the Palantir, looks into it. Sauron connects him and says, "Who the hell are you? What are you doing there?" Realizes that it's a little person, and he is talking with Saruman's Palantir. So Sauron thinks Saruman has the hobbits in his tower, so he sends Nazgul over to capture him. And Gandalf then relates to the group like, Saruman's fucked. Because Saruman is going to send the Nazgul to the tower. They're going to realize that he doesn't have the ring. And they're going to either think, one, he's lying about not having the ring, hence he's going to be in trouble. Or they're going to believe that he was defeated and the hobbits escaped with the ring, Hence, he's going to be in trouble. So no matter what, Saruman's fucked. All because the goddamn Hobbit touched that fucking Palantir. If he never touched the Palantir, Saruman could have like come back into power and probably could have been like a huge ally to Sauron later in the war. But Hobbit's got to be hobbiting, got to be curious. Super cool stuff. And I love that Saruman is double dealing with Sauron. Saruman he's out for him, you know? He's a powerful wizard that was once a part of this high order. Now he's been cast out. Now he's just nothing. He's screwed. And his staff is broke as fuck too. So it's just like, fuck. This guy is so screwed. But he deserved it because he was a dick. And this is a lesson to all of you kids out there. Don't be a dick, or you might end up like Saruman. All right. The more you discuss the differences between the movies and the novels, the more you see why Tolkien's estate was not thrilled with Peter Jackson, but you do think Jackson's changes were excellent. I agree. I think he actually improved on the novels through the telling of the films and contextualized them in a interesting way. It didn't fit it exactly. And again, they added stuff that was never in the novel. Like, for example, Aragorn was never chased off a cliff by more wargs. That just never happened. They never found combat between Rohan and Helm's Deep. So there was never a chance for Aragorn to fall off and have his horse come and save him and stuff like that, which is great in the film, but totally non-existent in the novels. It's a shame about Helm's Deep, your favorite scene in the entire movie trilogy. You wish you did a better job describing that. Yeah, me too. Me too. And the fact that, like, the Witch King of Angmar, the leader of the Nazgul, was on horseback when he was coming out of Minas Morgul. I wanted him on a damn, like, dragon or whatever the fuck they're called. What are those? Are they wyverns? What, like, the flying beasts? In, like, Dragonlance parlance, or in Dungeons and Dragons parlance, it would be like a dragon or a wyvern. I don't think they even described what it was, just that it was a flying creature in the book. But he wasn't even on it. And I wanted him on it. You're convinced Gandalf was better wizard than Saruman because he smoked weed. But he didn't. He smoked tobacco, not weed. It was only the films that it was suggested that it was weed. Fell beast. Yeah, that was it. Like, it was just a creature. Like, I want a name. Like Pokebirds or something. I don't know. Something deep, lore-like Pokebird. All right. Well, they're fell beasts. All right. Well, that's all I had. Thank you guys so much for tuning into my review of The Two Towers by J.R.R. by Jacobite by J.R.R. Tolkien. My favorite part of this novel had to be, let me think for a second. It's got to be the dynamic between Saruman and Sauron after Pippin touched the Palantir, because I just think that's hilarious. Like, he's fucked because of a fucking hobbit. And then my least favorite is, again, the lack of descriptions and the suggestions of all this really great lore, which I love, but it doesn't actually explain any of it. So you and he never would have explained it. At this point, when it was released, the Silmarillion was never released. So he's dropping all this lore, and he had zero plans on ever releasing it until years later. So if you just read this when it came out in the 50s, you would be like, what the fuck is going on? What is all this stuff? This is amazing. Like, and you would have no explanation at all. You just have to make it up because he didn't release it for a while. When was the Silmarillion released? I wonder. Now I'm curious. I want to find out. Anyway, I'll figure it out after my review's over. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, like it or not, evil spelled backwards is live. So get your tookuses out there and be evil.